Our next speaker asks us not only to imagine what is possible, but to think more carefully about what's humane, life-centered, and worth creating in the first place. Monika Bielskyte is the founder of Protopia Futures and Nike's first futurist in residence. Please welcome Monika with Embodied Futures, life-centric innovation. Monika.
Hello, everybody. We're going to be speaking how do we design the futures, because just predicting the future is not enough, because that means we would be only reacting. What we need to do is become proactive about it. And my big interrogation is really around where science fiction meets, influences, or contradicts reality. I think we have to acknowledge that it all starts with a vision. Unless we can see it first, unless we can imagine it first, we actually cannot do it. But does everything that seems futuristic really is? Or some of the things simply merely appear to be futuristic, yet actually are not future-proof at all? My argument really is that it is those that control the fantasy that end up controlling the future. Science fiction, fictional depictions of a future are being told to open our imagination. But historically, more often than not, they have misdirected us to think that something is futuristic, whereas it was just really anchored in a really outdated, not just cultural, social, and political understanding of the future, but even scientifically outdated understanding of the future that sort of dates decades or even a century into our past. So what do we do in face of that? What do we do in this moment when we are experiencing this crisis of imagination? I think we have to acknowledge that nostalgia is poison, but so is technocultism. There's no fictional perfect past to go back to, but technology is also not some kind of magical panacea. And whenever anybody positions any specific tech as some kind of magical answer, we have to follow the science, not the hype. All technology, all innovation is actually just material manifestation of scientific research. And innovation is never about positive future intentions or cool tech specs. It really is about impact. Impact on our bodies, on our relationship with other bodies, and how we exist on this planetary body. So, what if the future could be everything that we hope for, but not what sci-fi condition us to expect? What if it's not a failure that these flying cars that we imagine in the 1950s have never come in the shape that they were positioned to come? What if the future could cater to our emotional, to our social, to our economic needs, but in a very different manner than what we were preconditioned to? We have to start with what do we say no to, right? What is really broken? What doesn't work? And we have to understand how the status quo was constructed if we attempt to break it, right? We cannot just jump into the future without addressing the legacy of our past. But no is not enough. It is just the first step. The next step is to identify what could be those maybe imperfect, but better shared future yes visions. And they have to be anchored not merely in optimism, not merely in that wishful belief that things somehow are going to turn out better. Somebody is going to do it for us. A superhero is going to come and save the day. They have to be anchored in this informed hope to understand the full scope of the issues and believe that they are worth addressing. And it's not just about being right. In fact, much more than being right at the get-go, it's about the learning process and how that learning can be an antidote to politics of fear and isolation? How can we invite genuine curiosity? And so my way to address all of these issues has been to develop what I call Protopia World Stack that consists of three frameworks: Protopia Futures, Embodied Futures, and Story World Design. So let's begin with Protopia Futures. Protopia Futures is an antidote to that binary utopian dystopian thinking. It's not about doom and gloom, and it's not about unattainable perfection. And it's not some kind of middle vanilla center. It's a vision beyond. And it's a decision architecture for regeneration, proactive prototyping that is not led by magical new tech, but based on inclusive values, informed by science, and supported by advanced technological tools. These are the principles of Protopia: structural plurality, systemic interdependence, regenerative resilience, joy imperative, creative foresight, meaning and belonging. We don't have the full time to dive deep into all of these, but it's a sort of cheat sheet that I use to help clients, collaborators, colleagues to see what are the aspects of the future that we need to address, not as some kind of hierarchical pyramid of needs, but as interlinked circles. Where do we start to construct something that feels worth inhabiting? And underlying all of that is life-centric design. We know that user-centric design paradigm is broken. Human-centric design is also reductive because it doesn't acknowledge how we are tied with the biosphere. And so life-centric design is not some kind of hippy-dippy, wishful, let's do something nice for the planet. It's actually a design approach anchored in a scientific understanding of the interconnectedness between humanity and the biosphere, which takes us to that second framework: embodied futures. Embodied futures is innovation strategy body audit. How these values, how these visions, how these strategies that we come up with actually ends up landing on the reality of our bodies, on the reality of our biology. And if we understand that one thing that we cannot survive without, because uploading our minds to computers and becoming entirely engineered entities is just a science fiction story, is not a reality. And if we do acknowledge that, then we see that biology, not silicon or rockets, is the final frontier. Life, in fact, is the most advanced technology and the greatest source for our inspiration. But with that, it is really important to not succumb to the eugenics trap. Embodiment is not just our bodies looking perfect or delivering a perfectly optimized performance. It's understanding that our bodies are in this constant transformation and the future is disabled for most of us. And that is not a bad thing. In fact, these edge insights from disability community, from accessibility, delivers a more resilient and better product, platform, technology, tool, and policy design for all of us. Which takes us to that last layer: story world design. If we just come out with strategic plans, manifestos, and bullet points, it just doesn't hit the people. It doesn't translate what is this future that we're actually working towards. So story world design is narrative infrastructure for adoption, utilizing these techniques from Hollywood world building, but applying them to real world challenges. So really what it is current multi-portal vision that makes future tangible, graspable, current, energizing, and worth participating in. And this all leads us to this acknowledgement that curiosity, creativity, and participation, not moralizing, not didactism, not punishment, this is what results in resilience against this demoralization warfare. Because us getting demoralized is not a bug, it's a feature. Us disengaging from future making serves the interests that are not ours. So we need to embrace that agency. Future is shaped not just by our actions, but also by our apathy. And with everything that we do, especially within our domains of expertise, whether it's technology, whether it's marketing, whether it's business, whether it's policy, we get to shape the future. So I'm excited to see what you could do with what I presented. Thank you.